Hi all, I am Samira Hanif. Today we can have a discussion on the 4th semester BA English textbook Appreciating Fiction. And the textbook Appreciating Fiction has got total 4 modules, and the module 1 is Understanding Fiction, which tells us about fiction. What is fiction? Plot, characters, atmosphere, point of view, narrative techniques, difference between long fiction and short fiction, types of fiction, etc. And module 2 is about some short fictions, and the third module contains a long fiction, that is Animal Farm by George Orwell, and module 4 is a film Moby Dick, and it is directed by John Hudson. So today we can have a discussion on our first module, that is what is fiction, and in today's class we can have a discussion on novel. And let us check what is fiction. The text begins with a quotation. Yet, most people know the difference between a lie and a fiction. A lie is meant to deceive, a fiction is meant to entertain. This is a quotation from Marjorie Bolton's The Anatomy of the Novel. So, we all know that there is a similarity between a lie and a fiction, that both are not real. But a lie is meant to deceive someone, to cheat someone, but a fiction is meant to entertain. And we can say that fiction is a narrative about invented characters or events, and it do not claim to be true. It is the product of imagination. Just like a lie, a fiction is a product of imagination, and it do not claim to be real or true. And in a very broad sense, we can include a wide variety of narratives, including stories, fables, fairy tales, myths, legends, epics, narratives, narrative poetry, plays, theatrical performances, films, television programs, radio dramas, etc. under the heading fiction. So in a broad sense, fiction includes these all, but if we are narrowing it down, or in a very limited sense, in a narrow sense, fiction refers to mainly 3 types of writings, that is a novel, short story, and novella. So fiction is the product of imagination. It is the narration about invented events and characters, and in a very broad sense, fiction includes every form of writing. It can be a radio drama, it can be a television program, it can be myths, legends, epics, narrative poetry, etc. But in a very short sense, or in a very popular sense, fiction refers to novels, short stories, and novella. So in today's class, let us analyze what is a novel. And defining the term novel is an arduous task. It is a very difficult task because it stands for a great variety of writings. And most commonly, the novel is defined as an extended fictional narrative in prose, usually long enough to warrant a separate publication. So we can define a novel like this, that it is an extended fictional narrative. It is written in prose, and it is usually long enough which is enough for a separate publication. But in a detailed analysis, we will understand that this definition is not accurate for a novel, because there are exceptions. There are some novels which are non-fictional, so we cannot say that it is always fictional. And some are written in verse, and we cannot say that it is written in prose, and some don't even tell a conventional story. So a novel is beyond all these definitions, and this popular literary form acknowledges no obligatory structure, style, or subject matter. It is open and it is flexible. That's why novel became a most important literary genre in the modern age. It is flexible, it is open. Through novel we can express our feelings, and it is a very better medium to express our thought processes. And in the text, Contemporary Fiction, a very short introduction, Robert Eggleston says, of all the arts, the novel is the most thoughtful, the closest, and most personal. Of all the arts, the novel is the most thoughtful, the closest, and most personal. So now let us analyze a brief history of novel. And before that, we should analyze the etymology of the word novel. In European languages, the alternate term for novel is roman, which came from romance. So, in European languages, the term for novel is Roman, which came from the medieval term romance. The English name for name novel came from the Italian word novella. Novella means something new. So, this is the etymology of the word. In European languages, the alternate term for novel is roman, which came from romance. In English languages, the word novel came from the Italian word novella, which means something new. And let us analyze history of novel. Let us analyze a brief history of novel, and we can say that a novel actually began with Don Quixote, which was written by Cervantes, and its part 1 was published in 1605 and part 2 in 1615. And this Don Quixote recounts the adventures of a madly idealistic protagonist who lives under the delusion that he is a knight errant and consequently attempts to perform what he believes are chivalric deeds. Don Quixote is a very beautiful novel which tells the story of a man who imagines himself as a knight. And he has got that chivalric spirit. He fights with imaginary characters, and like that, that's a very beautiful comic novel. And coming to France, we can say that the inaugural landmark in the history of novel was Madame de la Fayette's La Princesse La Clavis, which was published in 1678. And in English literature, novel, as we know, it was introduced in the 18th century and as such a distinctive work. And there are some notable novels that we should not forget while analyzing the history of novel. And first one is Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, published in 1719, and Moll Flanders, published in 1722. Robinson Crusoe and Moll Flanders. And we have Samuel Richardson's Pamela, published in 1740, and Clarissa in 1747. And we have Henry Fielding's Joseph Andrews in 1742 and Tom Jones in 1749. And coming to the 19th century, novel came into its own as the most popular and important literary form. In 19th century, novel became the most popular and important literary form, and it became the best to express the prevailing doctrines like realism, naturalism, and there were some doctrines like some streams of thoughts like realism and naturalism in literature, and novel became the best medium to express these such characteristics of realism and naturalism. And we should remember some names. The novel achieved its heights in France with the works of Balzac, Gustave Flaubert, Saint-Hilaire, Emile Zola, and in Russia it was with Alexander Pushkin and Dostoevsky. You are familiar with Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, etc. And in England we have Jane Austen, Sir Walter Scott, Thackeray, Charles Dickens, George Eliot, Thomas Hardy. And in United States, in America, we have Cooper, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville, and Mark Twain, Henry James, etc. So these are some names that you should remember while analyzing the history of novels. And I am sure that you are familiar with some of these, at least you are familiar with some of these novelists. You might have heard of Mark Twain, Melville, who wrote Moby Dick, Nathaniel Hawthorne with his Scarlet Letter, etc. Okay, so you should try to read at least a few of them. And coming to this 20th century, there came a division, and the division became apparent between the popular forms of novel and various experiments of modernism and postmodernism from the stream of consciousness to anti-novel. So, in 20th century, the distinction between popular novel and the novels postmodern or modern novel became much more evident with some techniques. And the most important novelists of this century, of 20th century, include James Joyce, Franz Kafka, Thomas Mann, Virginia Woolf, William Faulkner, D.H. Lawrence, Fowles, Ernest Hemingway, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Margaret Atwood, Toni Morrison, Orhan Pamuk, Umberto Eco, Naipaul, Salman Rushdie, James Coetzee, etc. So this is a short history or very brief history about novel. So from today's class you might have understood what is novel or what is fiction. Fiction is the product of imagination, and it not claimed to be true, and in broad sense we can include anything and everything, television programs and radio programs, all under the heading of fiction. But in a very popular sense, fiction includes novels, short stories and novella. And today we have analyzed what is a novel. And novel, we could not define a novel, and it began with Cervantes. We have to say it began with Cervantes, and we have analyzed a very brief history of novel in today's class. In our next class we can have a discussion on short story and novella. And that's all for today. Thank you.